If you haven't opened your wines yet, please do now. And let's have some fun. It's Friday night. Over to you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Lorena, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for joining us this evening, and to our three ladies who are zooming in from Portugal, from Spain, and from France. So it's wonderful to have everyone here, especially on a Friday night when we would like to have some wonderful wines, which we're going to share together. So why are we here? Why this evening? Why have we put this particular tasting together? Well, we did this really to celebrate International Women's Day, which is next Monday. It's a global event that celebrates the achievements of women all around the world. It's been going for a long time now. And we decided that we had to do something to mark this. So we've got a campaign that you may have seen on our website. But we thought, okay, let's get a tasting of some of our favorite women from the wine world and from our producers. And that's what we've done. So we've got three exceptional estates contrasting. So we have Maria Otero, who's representing Adegas Galegas in Galicia, the farthest northwest of Spain. We have Morey from Burgundy, from Merceau, and we have Sandra Tavares, who is from Portugal and actually runs two estates, one near Lisbon and the other in the Douro Valley. And we're going to be tasting three very different wines and learning all about them from the lady who are involved so closely in making them. So what I'd like to do is to start with Maria Otero, who is joining us from Galicia, in northwest Spain, and we're going to be talking all about the history of the area, about Adegas Galegas, the winery itself, and we'll also be talking about the very particular climate of this area, the grapes that grow here, which are really interesting indigenous grapes typically, and how that what that means for the wine styles that those factors bring us. You actually have two wines from Adegas Galegas in your case, a delicious Godello, which we won't be tasting tonight, but please do taste soon, and Adegas Galegas flagship Albarino, which is called Vegadares, and that's the wine we'll be tasting tonight. So we'll get on to that very shortly. Maria, hello, welcome.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon with us, for giving us the opportunity to taste our wines with you. Hope you enjoy a lot. And please, any questions you have, please feel free to do it on the chat, and we will try to answer all of them.
We certainly will. So Maria, can you set the scene a little and tell us a little bit about Galicia and then Adegas Galegas, because it's such a special area, isn't it, within Spain? And some people are not very aware of it.
Yeah, it's true. Galicia is not the most well-known region of Spain, but it's very interesting. Actually, Galicia is that little tiny region of Spain which is located in the northwest corner of the country, right above Portugal. Actually, after Galicia is just the cold ocean, Atlantic Ocean for miles. At some point, to be honest, the explorers thought Galicia was the end of the world. But it's a region which is kind of world famous for the historical city of Santiago de Compostela. Maybe it sounds because it's the Santiago de Compostela is the end point of the Camino de Santiago. El Camino de Santiago, or the Way of St. James, is the end point of one of the most famous and important pilgrimage routes in Christendom. Well, sometimes Galicia, what makes Galicia different or special comparing it with the rest of the country, with the whole Spain? Well, Galicia sometimes is often referred to as the green Spain, because the hillsides of Galicia, sometimes recall the Celtic history of the region. We have a lot of old churches, we have granite castles, we have manor houses. And no doubt it is a region, it's a unique land of magic traditions, and of course, wine. Wine is very important in Galicia. At the moment, we have 5 different denominations of origins, and Adegas Galegas, our winery, is located in the denomination of origin called Rías Baixas, which is very well internationally well known because of the Albarino, which has been the flagship for this tiny coastal region. Just for, yes, Rías Baixas, the meaning, what does it mean, Rías Baixas? Rías Baixas is the Galician name because in that little tiny region, we have our own language. We speak Spanish, but we also speak Galician, which is in the medieval times, it was a very important language. And Rías Baixas is Galician for lower Rías, and they refer to 4 estuaries located in the southwest coast of the region. A ria, or an estuary, is a deep, wide inlet of water reaching many miles inland from the Atlantic Ocean. So the name Rías Baixas was chosen because our Albarino vineyards, they are located along the coastline of these 4 rías. But what I love about the name is because, according to a local legend, the Rías Baixas, they are the traces left by the fingers of God's hand when, after creation, he decided to rest for a moment in Galicia, because the shape of the Rías is pretty similar to the shape of the fingers of a human hand.
I guess there are worse places to take a rest.
Yes, I guess so. And well, and Adegas Galegas, our winery, well, Adegas Galegas for me is a winery, but it's also history. It is alive, and I personally think it is continuously evolving because it was set up in 1995, not a long time ago, with the main objective to highlight the indigenous varieties, the indigenous grapes of the region and the winemaking tradition of the area. And from the very beginning, Adegas Galegas, it has always been very reputed for the quality of its wines and for the admiration and the respect for these indigenous varieties, this winemaking tradition of the area, and the different valleys in the Rías Baixas region. It has grown a lot, it has developed, but it's always supporting its people, its land, its culture. I think it's a project that it started with the dream and the efforts of a very small group of vine growers, and nowadays it's a reality, and a reality of more than 100 families working very hard. To me, I always say that our winery, I think it is a winery made by people for people.
It's so amazing to hear about, how wineries have evolved. I mean, some are very, incredibly historic, going back centuries, and others, have come about for social reasons. And
Yes.
we work with, wineries around the world of many different shapes and sizes. But actually, Adegas Galegas, 100 families, but it's actually the vineyard holdings are quite tiny, aren't they?
Yeah, that's true, because in Galicia, the land is being so fragmented, it's been very atomized, because here we follow pretty much the Napoleon system. When the people gets the land from the family, doesn't matter if you're a boy or if you're a girl, if your parents, they have a single piece of land, what they're gonna do is to equally divide the land in the number of pieces according to the number of children. If they have 3 children, they're going to divide the land in 3 pieces. That's why over the years, the land is being so fragmented, and the vineyards are very tiny. Actually, here in the region, we don't talk about hectares, because having an hectare is, oh my goodness, you're so lucky to have an hectare. Just for you to have an idea, the average size per vineyard is around 3,000 square meters. Yes, 3,000 square meters.
So how many, I mean, you probably can't tell me this so easily because it depends on yield and where it is and all the rest of it, but how many bottles might that mean?
Yes.
Theoretically?
Well, if we take in account the average yield per hectare, an hectare is 10,100 square meters. So we will get from a vineyard of 3,000 square meters approximately, depending on the year, around 2,500 bottles or 3,000 bottles.
Which is really nothing, is it? It's such a small quantity by comparison with so many other wineries around the world. Listen, I just wanted to come back a second to, climate and grape varieties. I mean, I touched on the fact that, we've got well, you talked about God, but we also talked about Godello, the variety behind the other wine in the case that people have received, those who are here tonight. Would you like to just mention a little bit about the Godello grape and how it tastes, its sort of signature sort of flavor and texture before we move on to Morey?
Yeah, talking about climate, it's very easy, because Galicia has a stronger resemblance to the green fields and the rocky coastline of Scotland, for example, than the classic images of drier, hot Castilian plains. So, Mother Nature does not grant an emerald landscape without a price, which is high rainfall. So, but we are lucky because we have a cool maritime climate with lots of rain, but balanced by plenty of sunshine hours during the growing and ripening season, both of Albarino and Godello. Godello is a grape that it's not 100% native from Rías Baixas. Our Godello is native from Monterrey. Monterrey is also located in Galicia, but imagine Rías Baixas in the Albarino is just by the ocean. And if you drive straight inland, you will get to Monterrey. Monterrey is approximately 3 hours drive inland from the ocean. And there, the queen, the crown jewel is the Godello grape. The Godello grape is not as popular as Albarino yet, but please give it a try, because for me, Godello, it's fantastic. It's a very upcoming white varietal from Spain. And what I love of Godello is it's very nice, it's very fresh, it's very easy drinking, but on the palate, it's great because it's very mild, it has a lot of creaminess. For example, when I talk to my friends and my international friends, sometimes I told them, okay, do you like Chardonnay? Do you like that kind of an oaked style of Chardonnays? And they say, well, okay, yes, that's my choice. And I tell them, well, if you want to try something different, but pretty much in the same style, and from Spain, this is Godello. Godello is your grape. It's super food friendly, it's very easy drinking. And well, I love Albarino, but I also love Godello.
I totally agree. And I think it's going to become more and more popular. I mean, perhaps there's not enough of it really to have the sort of ubiquity of a grape like Sauvignon Blanc, but it really is such a special grape in the way it can be made, and this beautiful silky texture that I really love about the grape, and it's really particular to that. But anyway, I am absolutely dying to try the Vegetaris. The sun has gone over the yardarm and it is 6:19 and I would quite like a drink. And this Vegetaris, I'm very pleased to say that this first drink of the day is Vegetaris, which is your flagship Albarino, isn't it? And scooped many top awards. It's a very distinctive style. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, no doubt, Vegetaris is our flagship because Vegetaris for me is in a single bottle, you have the very best of the region. Sometimes we say that Vegetaris aims to be the Blanc de Blanc from Rías Baixas, making the most of its richness. Because Vegetaris, here we have the most important indigenous white varietals from Rías Baixas. Just for you to have an idea, over 99% of the wine made in the Rías Baixas region is white. And while 12 grapes are permitted, Albarino grape represents pretty much 95% of all plantings. And the other three most important indigenous grapes from Rías Baixas traditionally blended with Albarino, they are Treixadura, Caíño, and Loureiro. So here in Veigadares, we have a blend of these 4 grapes. Mainly 85% of the blend is Albarino, because Albarino is for me, it is the backbone of the wine. It is the structure, it is the balance, it is the crispiness. And then we have 5% of Treixadura, because Treixadura offers really nice minerality in the blend and very elegant aromas on the nose. But then we also need 5% of Loureira, because Loureira, what it does in the blend, it enhances the intensity on the nose. Albarino gives this kind of freshness, then Treixadura, this elegant floral notes, and then Loureira, it enhances everything. And finally, in order to make the perfect balance and the perfect blends and highlighting the whole freshness of the blend, it is the 5% of Caíño. So Veigadares is a blend of these 4 grapes in the very percentage in order to have the very best of each grape. But then I would say that if we only think about the 80% of Albarino in this blend, it's very important also to say that Veigadares also tries to have the very best of each valley in Rías Baixas. Rías Baixas is a tiny region, but we have 5 different wine producing valleys of Albarino. And so with Veigadares, what we have is in the Albarino grape is the very best of each valley. So in order to have the very best of the Salnes Valley, which is, well, the most popular valley, in Salnes Valley, the Albarino from this valley give us this kind of freshness, crispiness, salinity character, because it's very, very close to the ocean. Then we have Albarino from O Condado. The Albarino from O Condado, it's very elegant. It gives that kind of earthiness, elegance character. And then finally, we need also the Albarino from O Rosal Valley, because the Albarino from O Rosal Valley is all about soft exuberance and notes. So we blend grapes, we blend 4 grapes, and then with the Albarino, we blend Albarino grapes from these 3 valleys. But apart from that, Veigadares also aims to be the perfect blend between this varietals character and the elegant, well-integrated oak, because the wine has been fermented and aged in French oak foederers or of 2,500 liters. The foeder is big barrique. I mean, in order, well, we decided that we wanted to ferment the wine in these big barriques in order to have different final style. And then it's important because the wine, if you taste the wine, it has a very unique silkiness and volume. And we get that kind of silkiness, character, and volume because Botanache, with the very best fine lees, is made twice a week per 6 months, providing the wine this unique silkiness and volume, especially on the palate, and allowing it to develop, I think, that its signature roundness and balance. And then important, after that, after fermentation and after aging, we decided to keep the wine in a stainless steel tank, allowing reductive aging for a year before bottling in order to get the perfect balance and the perfect integration. And after bottling, the wine is not ready yet because the wine needs to be aged in bottle for 6 months before being released, in order to have the perfect balance, the perfect blending. So aromatically speaking, for me, Veigadares is like your favorite perfume. Because for me, it's very elegant, but very complex at the same time, with very inviting aromas of ripe citrus fruits, fresh aromatic herbs, like for example, rosemary or fennel, as well as hints of, I would say, baking spices, white pepper, nutmeg, but with bright minerality. And this bright minerality, no doubt, it comes from the mineral-rich soils of the region.
It's very interesting, actually, because it's sort of, you know, sometimes when, you know, you find a sort of cheap Albarino, I would say, you know, that's become quite popular, you know, on wine list at restaurants and things, you know, bistro type, you know, they can be very kind of bright, sort of like a star jump in a glass sort of thing, you know, really, really bright and aromatic. But actually, if you think of this wine, I mean, it is, you know, there are lovely sort of fresh aromatics, but they're a little bit subdued, which is really nice. And then they don't dominate the oak doesn't dominate the aromatics, and you've got this sort of integrated whole. And I like the silkiness, but also the freshness. There's lovely acidity on this wine.
Yes, because the Albarino grape, actually, the Albarino from Rias Baixas shares the same mineral-rich soils and cool climates as the world's other most important white wine-producing regions, for example, including the Douro Valley or New Zealand or the Rhine region in Germany. So the Albarino is, normally it shows these fresh, bright aromas, but it's a grape that it also has the structure and complexity for aging. So, but not forget that our climate, our kind of soils, our very unique terroir gives us wines with good natural acidity and balance. That's why even Tavares has been aged and fermented in oak. At the end, you get that kind of bright freshness from the region where the wine comes from. The wine is telling you, hey, hello, I am an Albarino. I am an Albarino barrel fermented, but an Albarino from Rias Baixas. And Rias Baixas, it means that freshness, bright character, maybe some kind of even saltiness, very subtle saltiness.
Yeah, there is that saline character, definitely. You know, I'd love to, I'm going to drink this all night, but we've got 2 other wines to do as well. I was going to ask you a little bit about you, but actually I think what we're going to do, just in the interest of time, I'm going to just move on to our next guest here this evening, and then we may come back at the end and talk a little bit more, you know, maybe take some questions about, you know, food matching, and also, you know, find out a bit more about you and what's inspired you in the wine trade. But for now, I think I'm going to invite our guest from Burgundy, Morey, to come into the hot seat so that I can grill her about the history of Domaine Pierre Morey, where she is now in Meursault in Burgundy. Anne, I'm not sure I can see you on the screen. You must be here somewhere.
You don't see me on the screen.
Oh, no, I can see you now.
The wine in your glass, I think it's more interesting.
Actually, I'm going to get your glass now. I would recommend that everybody makes sure that they've got all the wines open and has a glass of this wine. And thank you for joining us too. And I would love to hear from you a bit more about the history and sort of evolution of your historic family domain, and a little bit, you know, the vineyards you have, where they are in Burgundy, and also telling us about biodynamics, which is obviously your passion. And we, you know, I know that we're going to learn so much about that tonight. For those who are our guests tonight, you've got 2 wines from Domaine Pierre Morey in your case. You have the Montilly from the 2017 vintage, as well as the Bourgogne Côte d'Or Chardonnay, which we'll be tasting tonight. So we'll come on to that in a moment, but for now, I'm going to hand over to Anne. So can you tell us a little bit more about the domain, Anne?
Yeah, of course. Hello, everyone. Really nice to share this tasting with you. Nice moment while it's impossible to welcome you in our cellar. So Domaine Pierre Morey is established in Meursault, Côte de Beaune, Burgundy, middle part of the France. Meursault is a village really well known for white wines, even if we still have a small production of Pinot Noir also. And when I heard Maria saying that her estate and region was a good thing, I think in Burgundy we can also say that, because when you will hear my family history, it's a good thing. Morey family arrived in Meursault in 1793, during just at the end of the French Revolution, a very long way from Chassagne, which is about 14 miles from Meursault, a long trip. In a time where Catholic Mass were forbidden in France and everywhere probably. And Alexis Morey, who was already a wine grower in Chassagne-Montrachet, used to come in Meursault hiding a priest to celebrate masses in a cellar. And his son was the man who just checked that everything was okay and they will not be stopped in that way. And it was probably not a deep face, because he used to stay at the foreground and not in the cellar to hear and pray during the Mass. And the family welcoming them, Milo family, had 3 daughters, and the son married one of the daughters and established in Meursault in that time. And here is the arrival of Morey family in Meursault. A long history in the vineyard for us. On the picture, you can see that it's still a family business, because this picture was taken during harvest, 20 harvest, with my father Pierre and my son Jean-Victor, who just arrived a few days before harvest.
Very, very kind of him.
3 generations working together. Wait and see.
Yeah, it must be very interesting to work, with your father, who's obviously, quite a figure in Burgundy. For those who don't know, Pierre Morey worked for, I think, 20 years as the régisseur of Domaine Le Fleuve, and that's actually how I think we, Corny and Barrow and Domaine Pierre Morey came together. It must be.
My family was very lucky. My grandfather started working his own vines, and also farmed a big part of Comte-Lafon vineyard for a long time, and my father continued until the beginning of 90s. And from 88 to 2008, my father was also cellar master and technical director at Domaine Le Fleuve in Puligny-Montrachet.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I mean, it's very interesting, to see how, the biodynamic principles that, everybody knows, or everybody in the wine world anyway, knows so much of it in the context of Domaine Le Fleuve, how you have also adopted those principles and farm your vines biodynamically today. What does that mean for you? I mean, some of those here tonight may well be familiar with biodynamics and this approach, but I think it would be really interesting to give us a little bit more of an insight into it, and also what that actually means on a day-to-day basis. Just some examples of what you do.
What do we do? The first thing is to understand that perhaps the idea of biodynamic in the vineyard is much more something really practical, not only a philosophy. The first thing is to imagine that vines is someone alive, and that we want to really take care and help itself to be in a good health, to produce good grapes and then good wines. The first thing when we start to work with organic or biodynamic method is to stop chemical products to spray in the vines, and to start again to plow. That's really the first thing, which is really important. But in the idea, I could say that we really try to help the vines to have a good balance between what is inside. We can see the roots and under part, and the aerial part outside. A good balance between all the leaves and the roots and the fruit, of course. For example, we are very sensitive in Burgundy to mildew and oidium, for example, and we still use small doses of copper and sulfur, but we really try to use very low doses and increase with plant teas to have a good balance. It's not really a problem if we have some mildew. It's becoming a problem if we have too much mildew. But if we have a small quantity of mildew, for example, if our vines are healthy enough and in a good balance, they can recognize it and develop themselves something to be stronger against that. That is the point we try to help the vineyard.
And this is sounding quite relevant in our current position of COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Very
we
human.
can make a small comparison between the plant and people health, of course. From last spring, almost 1 year now, I drink every day many different teas for myself to increase my immunity.
Yeah. And it's really a fascinating topic, but so many wine producers that I've met with have, asserted the fact that, they're trying to do is actually balance the plant, as a living organism, and that by doing that, by reinforcing its sort of natural immunity, it will be able to fend off some of these pernicious diseases of the vine that, can be so problematic, for wine production. But we had a question actually in the chat box asking, is it just no chemicals in the vineyard or in the wine too? I wonder if you could answer that.
Yeah, I can.
Thank you.
We still use small doses of sulfur in the wine during the vinification. For many different reasons. First, because sulfur is not only against oxidation, but also because it's oh, I don't know the name in English, I'm sorry. Antiseptic.
Antiseptic.
Okay.
If in doubt, just say it with a British accent.
And because most of our wines travel a lot, so I think it's important. But the important thing is to try to find the good time to add some sulfur in your wine. And for many different years, we try more and more to use not chemical sulfur, but mine sulfur extraction. And it's really interesting because since we started to use that, we decreased the doses from 10 times perhaps. During tasting, when we made some different cuvées, some with this mine sulfur and the other, and with no sulfur sometimes. It's really interesting that all the people tasting the wine don't feel the burning aspect of sulfur when you just add it. So I think we will try to continue in that way to decrease more and more sulfur doses, but I'm not ready. I don't want to make a nature wine today. Because all the wine which age in our cellar, it's okay, but sometimes going to Japan or far away from here, it can be very different from one bottle to another, and yeah. I don't want that.
No. I mean, and also sulfur dioxide, without wanting to go on to have a rant, but you know, when you learn a little bit more about the science behind sulfur dioxide, it's become a little bit hyped. It gets shot down, sulfur dioxide, as something bad, and actually it isn't really something bad. It's a tool. And of course, if you abuse any tool, then it's going to have negative effects. But a lot of people, according to, I've got several friends who are doctors, but also have an interest in wine, and who believe that actually some of the reaction that people think are caused by sulfur dioxide, actually something completely different. For example, biogenic amines, you can have an antihistamine reaction or histamine reaction. And so I think sulfur dioxide does get a bad rap at times. But anyway, I think it's good to reduce, to a level which is manageable. I think we better get on to the tasting. Now, we are tasting tonight your Bourgogne Chardonnay Côte d'Or. Now, this is actually a new classification, isn't it? Can you tell us a little bit about it as we taste all together?
Yeah, Bourgogne Chardonnay and Bourgogne Chardonnay Côte d'Or from Pierre Morey are exactly the same cuvée. We are allowed since 15 vintage, I think, to add Côte d'Or to just be more precise where the grapes come from. The first vintage we added Côte d'Or on the labels is 17 that you have in your glass tonight. And don't be surprised, because next vintage 18 you won't see it for an administrative reason in France. But the reason why so many wine growers ask for this precision on the label was because you can find Bourgogne Chardonnay very different and with very different tastes, depending if it comes from Mâcon region or Côte Salonnaise or Chablis or Côte de Nuit or Côte de Beaune, with different terroirs. And for a long time, some Bourgogne Chardonnay were already with a precision. For example, Bourgogne Irancy, Bourgogne Côte d'Auxerre. and it can help you to understand more what you have in your glass and when exactly it's come from.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that, because I think it's relatively little known. I think for us, it's so complex, the appellation system of Europe, and particularly France and Burgundy. In any case, the very nature of Burgundy is fragmentation. So I think that's very helpful just to give that little insight. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the 17 vintage and the wine we have in our glass?
Yeah, 17 vintage was a really beautiful vintage for Burgundy. We started with a very early spring, and it was a very early harvest also, the first day of September, and which is almost classical now, but it's still very early for ourselves. And but what is very interesting with 17 is that even if it's an early vintage because of a warm and dry summer, we have in the wine very good balance with a beautiful acidity, and tasting 17 vintage is not like tasting most of warm and early vintages. It's very classical for Burgundy, with a lot of elegance. With biodynamy, we usually compare with the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and air. And for me, 17 is really air elements. A lot of elegance, a lot of different aromas, and you just pick one and up, it's already another and another and another. It's really brilliant wines, both red and white. But Chardonnay expression in 17 is really beautiful. It's already quite open, and you can drink it fast. It will probably age very slowly, but age very well, like usually. What I didn't say is that our Bourgogne Chardonnay, but also Bourgogne Pinot Noir and Bourgogne Aligoté are 3 cuvées, always a blend from different plots of vines, but all located in Meursault area, bottom of the slope, regional appellation places, not village put in regional appellation, but all are very close from the winery. And Bourgogne Chardonnay is located in many different vines, middle and south part of Meursault, because Meursault is like a junction between red coat and white coat. The north part of Meursault is just close to Volnay, so it's still Pinot Noir, beautiful expression and production. And south part of Meursault, we can find Puligny and Saint-Aubin, and then Chassagne-Montrachet. So the north part of Meursault is the best place for Pinot Noir, and the middle and south part of Meursault is much more nice for Chardonnay.
Chardonnay. I mean, it's fascinating to hear that insight, actually. I mean, I didn't know that, despite having gone to Burgundy quite a few times myself. It's so fine, this wine. I mean, I don't know whether it's because it came after, a frost vintage when the vines hadn't had a chance to really, produce their fruit most of the time, but it feels expressive, but also really refined. I mean, one of our guests tonight has asked, how long will this wine continue to improve for? Could you answer that quickly before we move on to Sandra?
Yeah, I think usually I know that regional appellation are well known to be ready to drink very quickly, but we have very deep and cold cellar and very long élevage. Usually Chardonnay bottling is after between 18 and 24 months. And because of this very long élevage, everything in barrel, not new oak, it's usually a wine which ages very well. It will be probably one of the first ready to drink in all our wines, but it can age very well also. So it will probably improve for 5, 6, 8 years. I'm
Well, it's got that lovely acid and extract.
and because also 17 has a beautiful acidity, yes.
Oh, Anne, thank you. I'm sure, like Maria, we could talk to you all evening, but I'm just conscious of the time, and I think we'll have to move on. Even though I'm very glad I've got some wines.
Beautiful wines.
Oh, yes, of course. You know, because we asked the ladies to share their bottles, so everybody is drinking the wines here tonight. Okay, so I'm going to move on to Sandra. Hi, Sandra.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us from Portugal. Sandra is a bit of a Wonder Woman in having actually 2 wine estates in different regions of Portugal. So she, you know, shuttles between one and the other with several children, and you know, quite a feat. So Sandra, really pleased that you could join us for this tasting, and so delighted too that we'll be tasting your Pintache character from the Douro Valley, which I haven't tasted in a while. So I'm very glad to hear about that. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about what it's like having these 2 estates in the different regions, and how it came to be? You know, obviously the history of your family with Quinta de Chocapalha, and then, you know, the wine and soul venture in the Douro.
Yes. So good evening to everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here, and many thanks, Rebecca and all Corn & Barrow team to invite me. It's really wonderful to be here. So I'm coming from Portugal. I'm from Lisbon, and since very young, since very little, I belong to a farmer family. My family used to have a farm south of Lisbon, and since very little, I was always, and this farm was for my great-grandfather, where used also to grow vineyards. And since I was very little, every week, every holidays, we were there and helping the family. So since for a long time, I was always into the land, into the farms. And at certain point, and my father was, even he was a Navy officer, he was traveling along all the world, he was always in missions and so on. He was in charge of this property from my grandfather. But at a certain point, he decided to change his life. He decided to move from the Navy to the land, and he wanted to buy that property from our family, original family, but it was not possible because there were not agreement. So we started to look for another property where we could start this dream of making projects and get our family more united. So we found Quinta Chocapalha, which is 50 kilometers northwest of Lisbon. So you can see on the image, it's very close by the ocean. So it has a lot of influence of the Atlantic Ocean. It looks very breezy, very big difference between day and night of temperature. But we have some mountains protecting us from the strong winds. So it creates a different microclimate. So it's perfect. It's an area where we can grow beautifully whites, but also reds. And this property, it's a very historic property. It sits, the origin is even from the 16th century. And the house, as it is now, it was built by, it's funny, it was built by a Scottish military that came to help Portuguese king protect from the French invasions. Sorry, and so from Napoleon invasions. And so this house, it's very British. I think it's not a typical Portuguese house. It's a very nice and very charm house. And the property in total has over 85 hectares of land, but the vineyards is 45 hectares of vineyards. Mostly indigenous varieties, but also international varieties. And this project, it was very fantastic. It was like a change of lives of our parents, and also from me and my sisters. And since the beginning, I was always, since I was 12 years old or 15 years old, I decided I wanted to be viticulturist. And then I started and studied agronomy, and after enology in Italy. And because I wanted to help my family and my parents. This is really a family dream. Of course, now it's already 3 generations involved. So my parents are very active, and so my father is always, almost every day in the vineyard. So he's more in the vineyard, in the fields. Even today, we have to take him out from the vineyards. He was pruning and he wanted to finish his parcel. It's only him that touched that parcel. And then it was pouring, it was raining so much. He said, Father, please come out from the vineyard. My mother, she's Swiss, and she's a very strong lady. She moved to Portugal on the 60s to just make an internship in the embassy, in the Swiss embassy. And then she met my father, which was a Navy officer, very pretty. So, and in fact, it was in the British embassy they met. And then they got married in 1 year because my father was going to the war. So this is a very nice story. But to say that the project of Chocapalha was really to keep us together, because my father, for many, many years, since my childhood, I remember he was always traveling. He was never at home. So we decided, no, we want to change our lives. We will buy a land where we will make our life and our dream. So we bought this property in 87. And you see the old houses are very old. And then we started to plant all replant, because there were already vineyards, but replant all vineyards. And we built a new winery on the landscape. So it's a very modern, but very, very, very practical winery. And everything, it's made organic. So it's an organic farmed. And in the winery, it's very it's not so interventive. I do very little intervention on the vinifications in order to the wines to express really the terroir and the grapes by itself. So I started here, and this was why I decided to study enology. But then when I finished my studies in Italy, I realized that the only region that I didn't know, it was Douro. That's why I went to Douro.
I was going to ask.
But to explain a little bit of Chocapalha as well, it's a region. It's a region that it's very old. It's one of the oldest wine regions in Portugal. But for many reasons, for many years, there was not well, treated and respected. And now 20, 30 years ago, new producers like us starting to give another life and another styles of wines to this region. It's a region with a lot of influence of the Atlantic, as I was saying. So we have always this breeze, this humidity in the morning.
It's misty here. These pictures sort of, they don't sort of look traditionally Portuguese. You know, we always think, I mean, perhaps it's because we're on a rainy sort of misty island. We always think of Portugal as sort of sunshine, 24/7. But this, these images are quite sort of maritime and sort of cool looking.
No, it's true because we are close by ocean, so it's always very misty in the mornings, but it can then after 10 a.m. it opens completely, the blue sky, and it's warm. But then again in the nights it drops, because sometimes it drops over 18 degrees, so it can be 35 during the day, and then in the night it can be very, very, very chilly. And this
so
is
you get, I suppose that's part of the signature style of the wine as well. So you've got this lovely rich fruit, but then this backbone of acidity thanks to those cool nights, right?
Exactly, and can have a very good phenolic ripeness and very long phenolic ripeness. So the wine can keep amazing acidity, very, very bright and fresh acidity, while in the reds we can have this richness and very good colors and very powerful tannins.
Well,
and
I mean, it's totally fascinating to hear about that, and luckily everybody has your 2016 Chocapalha in their case. But could you tell us then about how on earth you ended up in the Douro Valley, and of course, you know, your husband and everything. So tell us about that part of your adventure.
Yes, it was really an experiment, because as I was mentioning, I'm from the south. So all my family and all my roots are from south of Portugal and Switzerland, of course. But and then when I finished all my studies, and I realized that the only region I didn't knew, I never been, it was the Douro Valley. And you know, Douro Valley, it's the oldest wine region in the world. It was demarcated, so back in 1756. And it's a gorgeous, it's a unique wine region. It's really beautiful and heartbreaking. And when I came there the first time, it was just for making an internship in a small winery from a very good friend, which is Cristiano Van Zeller. And it was just for making one harvest and to see. But when I arrived there, I really was so in love with this landscape and the potential of the varieties, the tradition, all the vinification methods, all the diversity of grape varieties. You know, in Portugal, we have over 300 varieties, and in the Douro, we can find over 90. And in the old vineyards, we can find 30, 40, or even more varieties in the same plot. And that's what I was always fascinated. It was to explore these old vineyards that at that time, back in the late 90s, majority of the big port houses, they were promoting in a way to tear out these old vineyards and plant new vineyards in order to be mechanized. Because as you can see, vineyards are impossible to be mechanized. It's very steep valleys. It's over 30% inclination, high density, and it's impossible. Everything has to be done by hand. And then I met George. George is my husband. He's also a winemaker. He was working in another winery at Newport, another very nice port house, and also dry Douro wine. And we met, and then 1 year after we were going to get married, and we decided we wanted to do a wine together. So both of us were working with our families. So George is also the 5th generation in wine making, but mostly port wine. And I was the 3rd generation on dry wines, but in the south. And we were working we were helping our families, both of us, and when having our works in our wineries. We were the chief winemakers in other 2 wineries. So, but we decided we wanted to create something together. So in order to grow, to learn more, and to be free in all of decisions that we could do. So, and especially at that time, Douro were booming, you know, until 86, it was not allowed to produce dry wine in the Douro. It was only possible to produce, it was like a monopoly. It was only being allowed to produce port wine. And so after getting in the European community, there was not allowed to be monopolies. So there was the possibility to make dry wines. And that's why in the 90s, also because there's some university was just getting out with a new generation of winemakers, it created an explosion of new winemakers coming to the Douro and exploring this terroir, amazing terroir. So I'm lucky enough to be part of it. So we are a group of, I don't know, 20 winemakers that's starting at the same time, and we are really good friends, and we taste a lot together, we experiment a lot together, and very open-minded. So it's really interesting time. And that's how Wine and Soul came. It was the idea to explore the old vineyards in the Douro Valley,
which I suppose had been so undervalued, and yet a whole sort of movement came in and sort of saved them. I mean, let's just move on to the tasting. Tell us a little bit about this wine. I mean, I tasted also the Chocapalha 16 on the day before yesterday, and it's just amazing because there's sort of a family likeness in some ways between both wines, but this wine is just so exceptional, so characterful. What can you tell us about it?
Yes, it's character. It comes from very old vineyards that's we've been buying. So since 2001, we have been investing. Our major effort was to buy land. So now we already own 34 hectares of vineyards, old vineyards, especially in Pinhal Valley. So character, it's a blend of 5 plots very close by each other in Pinhal Valley. Vineyards with over 70 years old until 90 years old. And it's a field blend of over 30 different grape varieties. But we are still in the defining more, so probably there will be more. And we wanted our winery, it's very, very simple. We kept, and this is also fascinated us, it's the tradition of winemaking in the Douro. It's still a lot of influence from the Roman times. So we ferment everything in stone lagares, which is like a pool of stone, old pool made of granite, where we tread by feet. So it's depending of the years, we put the full bunch or we destem partially. Then it ferments on these open lagares where we tread by feet or just push the cap down, or doing even with our hands. So it ferments.
Can you explain to people why you do that? I mean, it's about the gentle extraction, isn't it? But I think, for some people, they won't, just be very interesting to hear why you use this technique.
So it's a very ancient technique. Our feet are very gentle to the grape, because even if you try to smash a seed with your fingers or with your toes, it's impossible. So, and Douro, we have a lot of tannins, and especially we don't want to extract the green tannins from the seeds or the stems. So this was made since the Roman time. It was to tread by feet, and like this we can do a very gentle extraction if we want. So we do less time, less people. Or for instance, for port wine, we also produce port wine. We put lots of people in the lagares and they tread for 4 hours, 5 hours in a row, until we extract the most that we want. But for the reds, it's the opposite, because our grapes are so rich in terms of color, of anthocyanins, and in terms of tannins. We have to be very careful not to over extract. So we do it very gently. And that's why working in lagares, it's fantastic, because it's a very wide surface, because it's you can imagine it's 4 square meters, and we just have 70 centimeters of grapes. Like that, it's just by pushing the cap down, we have so much contact between the skins and the musts that we extract a lot, even very gentle extraction.
And Sandra, we've had two questions here. First question is 30 different grape varieties. What are the principal ones? And the second question is, do you destem?
Yes, so we have, so there's many varieties, and so all these varieties were brought by the monks all over Europe, and of course some of them were planted over the centuries in Portugal, and of course they've been adapted over the years. The predominant grapes we have probably, of course, are the traditional. It's Touriga Franca, it's Tinta Roriz, it's Tinto Cão, Tinta Barroca, Touriga Nacional, Bastardo. I don't know, there's so many, but it's but in very little percentage. And I think that's why we love these old vineyards. It's because this blend, it's the field blend, you know, and that's why we love to work wines from origin. And like this, the blend is made in the vineyards, and they integrate so well, and they are in communion since they grow in the vineyards, that they have such a balance. And it's so funny to see, because mostly of the people, they ask us, but how, when you decide to pick, because we pick everything at the same time. And that's the hardest decision for us. It's the day of picking of those grapes, because you can imagine some are a little bit more ripe, others are a little bit more green, but this balance, the blend of them, they will create a wine much more complex and rich, with so many layers. And I think that's what character really shows. It's a wine with lots of fruit, lots of styles of fruit, and but also some herbal notes and earthy notes, and very nice tannins and freshness, because it's very old vineyards. They have very deep roots, and even our soils are very poor. Douro, it's schist, so it's very rocky. We don't have really soil. It's pure rock that we just break a little bit in order the root to go and to dig until the water. But we have a lot of water, so we have lots of springs of water. That's how these plants survive. It's amazing. Sometimes they go 50 and 20 meters deep to find the water and the minerals, and that's how they survive, because we don't irrigate anything. And I think,
sorry, I was going to say it. You know what you're saying, sort of. You know, yet again, I mean, I was talking to one of our winemakers yesterday. You know, this great concern that everybody, you know, who is well aware of it, thinks about in terms of climate change, and particularly the challenges for wine producers around the world, and the importance of having old vines with their deep roots, and the difference that can make, you know, to actually survival and production or not, and actually what the future will bring, you know, for winemakers in, you know, warmer regions, cooler regions, and so forth.
No, of course, this is very tricky and the very scary times that we are passing. But I think that's how also the reason that we invested so much in old vineyards. It's because of the resilience they show. They are very resilient, even in a very extreme years. They have shown us and teach us so much how they can survive and they can adapt to this climate change and still get the balance. Then the trick is us to decide how to work the vineyards in order to preserve them. So that's been the challenge, because and we are planting new vineyards, but still what we have been doing, it's we are not irrigating, because we want the roots to go down and to search for the water. And we are planting with the old varieties, all with the old varieties. We don't use clones or anything else. We use our own plants from the old vineyards. and the grapes with, of course.
Right,
And I think
it's fascinating about that. Tell us briefly about the 2015 vintage.
2015 vintage for me,
You've tasted wine.
it was one of the most perfect vintages because it was everything was beautiful. You know, all year long we had perfect rainfall during the winter. Spring was very good with mild temperatures. The flower season went very, very good. So it was the year with good production. Even we are talking low hills because we are talking very low old vineyards. So the hills are very tiny. We produce 2 tons an hectare, 3 tons an hectare, not more. But still, 2015 was slightly bigger than average. And then the quality was beautiful and everything was with time, you know, during the harvest, it was mild, not so warm as other years, as 2011, for instance, was much warmer, or 17 here was warmer. 15 was mild temperatures during summer, but very beautiful days. So it was, for us winemakers, it was very easy. Even if we couldn't pick that day, even the next day, it wouldn't be such a problem. Like 7 years, it's crucial, the day of picking. And 15, everything went very natural and organic. And I think it's a very floral vintage, but with this fresh berries taste and palate. So, and then on the palate, it's very rich with very good volume in the palate, but very fruity. So but still very young. So it's a wine that will age for many, many years still.
Well, it was very funny earlier because you were saying when we were having a chat earlier that you have in the Douro, what did you say? 9 months of winter and 3 months of hell.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
That's really true. Normally, we have 9 months of winter, which is very cold for Portugal, of course. We are because it's a very continental climate, so it's very different. We are very close by Spain, to very inland, so it's very extreme. So very cold. We have lots of ice and we don't get snow because it's very dry, but we get lots of ice. And then in summer we can go 45 degrees for 1 month, you know. So it's very extreme temperatures from June to September. So it's hard. So it's hard for the vineyards. So they have to be really resilient and adapted to this climate. That's why we love old vines, because they are very wise.
Well, clearly, I mean, it's just such a lovely wine, even to drink so young, but obviously has years stretching ahead of it. I'm very aware of the time, and I'm going to do something a bit different in this session. I think we'll wrap up this particular tasting, but we had intended, given that, you know, we've got a sort of cultural event of International Women's Day, we were going to spend a little bit of time talking to Maria and Sandra about, you know, their personal experiences as women in wine, but we didn't want to make this divisive or to start sort of saying, oh, we're, you know, women are totally different to men, or find negatives rather than positives. So I'd just like to bring, you know, and totally understand, by the way, for those of you who may have decided to, or may have put dinner on and to come on at 7:01 and would like to go, that's absolutely fine. But we'll just take 10, 15 minutes just as a, you know, to have all three ladies back on screen. So Anne, Sandra and Maria, just to have a chat together about, you know, your experiences in wine and actually the way in which you've found, surprisingly perhaps, your experience to be, you know, very inclusive in the wine industry. Maria, could I ask you for a moment? You know, I think I asked you a question expecting a very different response when we were talking in the preparation for this event. You know, what's it like? You know, Spain has an image of being very, patriarchal, particularly in the wine industry. But in fact, you completely debunked that and said, well, no, you hadn't experienced that at all. And I think that was echoed a bit with Anne and Sandra too. But Maria, can you tell me a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, it's true that most of Spain, it's a kind of very male oriented when we talk about the wine business. But we've been talking when we started the tasting and when we were talking about Varieties, we were talking about Galicia and we were talking about Rías Baixas, the very specific region where the wine comes from. And I think that we are very lucky in that region. I am local. Galicia and Rías Baixas is my homeland. And Galicia has always been considered a very matriarchal society. So actually, I consider myself very lucky because I cannot tell any bad experience about being in a, well, traditionally considered male wine business. Because as I said, we are in a very matriarchal society. Our winery is very inclusive. There's a lot of women in managing positions, which is very important. And but I am aware that the wine business can be difficult sometimes. So in this tasting, I would like to thank the first woman in the business for their hard jobs, because I think they had to work much harder than their male colleagues to prove themselves. But thank God, I want to believe that things are changing. And today, this tasting for me is one of the very best examples of how the wine business is changing, because we have 3 fantastic examples of wines made by women, and for me it's great and it's fantastic, and we have to keep on doing that more and more.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and it's very inclusive, but it's hard balancing the responsibilities, I think, at times. Anne, you were talking earlier about your experience of being a woman winemaker, and now you're working obviously with your father and your son on the estate, and the way in which you really enjoy that experience, because it brings, and you think it's actually very important to have those sort of 2 balancing influences. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. I know that for a long time, women were not in the wine business in Burgundy and wherever, and were probably forbidden in the winery. But for this long time, people involved in the wine business were father and son, loving that or not. What is important today, women or men, is that people involved in the wine business and are really passionate by their job. And that's the thing which is really important to me. We can't be a wine grower or a winemaker without this passion and this feeling that we really love that. And my experience is to be a woman between 2 men. And I think it's very interesting because we complete each other. What is in very interesting is that we have not the same sensitivity and the same feelings, and that's also probably because it's not the same age and the same generation, but it's wine tasting is sharing something. Wine caring is also sharing something, and we can't do it alone, men or women. We just need to be together and go further every day with our wine. I know that in English words are not feminine or masculine, but wine is feminine and wine is masculine, but we can find some feminine wine during the tasting, of course, but it's very funny. I think we need both together to improve everything.
I find that actually quite moving, what you just said, on so many levels. And the idea that, it's passion, you want to be where you are, it's inclusiveness, it's everybody working together, but recognizing, that we are different, but we bring different things to the table, and that actually at the end of the day, everyone benefits. I think that's, that's the way forward. Sandra, you've had, quite interesting experience, haven't you? Because, for years, obviously having that familiar experience of being plunged particularly into the Douro Valley, where yes, there were quite sort of entrenched traditions at that stage, and also you'd spent sort of 13 years, through studies as well, being a model, and then being plunged into this completely different environment in the Douro Valley, where I think it was probably quite male dominated by that stage, wasn't it? But you said that you felt very accepted.
Yes, I think, as Anne said, I think, and Marie, I think when you have a passion, and when I was, since very young, I was so passionate, and I was so focused when I want to be, what I want to do. So I was not seeing any problem with that, So even, and I was so lucky, even with my grandmother, she was very, because we are lots of cousins, just girls. We have a lot of our family, it's majority women, and my grandmother would say, no, you have to you have really to believe on yourself and fight for your dreams. And my parents as well, they never said nothing. They probably thought I was a bit crazy to go to the Douro, because Douro was really a very remote place at that time, and I was living in a tiny house alone, completely in the top of a mountain. And but I was so I wanted so much to do it, and I was believing so much I could learn and do better things. So I think I was not seeing any problem by being a woman. And in fact, I was lucky again with the people I worked and the environment that was in the Douro, even if it was only men majority. I was really well integrated, but somehow we have to prove a little bit more that we can do a little bit more than men, because people were a little bit skeptic in the beginning. But especially in the vineyards, and I loved to be in the vineyards. So when I was with the pruning with the team, they was always asking, but you know how to prune, and you know how to do this? And yes, of course, I need to learn more, but I know how to do it. And even or cleaning the tanks or washing the floor or whatever. But I think when you show you can do the same things, and like Anne saying, we complement each other. So I work with my father, and of course my sister and my mother in Chocapalha. And in the Douro, I work with my husband, and I think it's so important to create this team, and all of us are different, but together we are much stronger. And I think what's important working in a team, either is with our family or with my husband or with another winemaker, it's to define the style of the wines that we want to make and to follow that style. And I think we are different. I taste very different from my husband. I taste very different. My styles of tastings are very different from my father or my sister. But I think the results are much better when we work together. And I think that's what's lovely in wine. It's to produce something to share with others and to share emotions, and it's unique. Every year it's a unique experience.
Oh, it's great to hear that, and actually all these experiences from from you, Maria, and Anne, and you, Sandra, and it all point back to the same thing, really. It's about, you know, how would I put this? It's about passion for what you do, and about daring, about innovation, and it's about inclusiveness. You know, this sense that you know, actually all of you have said about, you know, completeness. Yes, you know, perhaps we're at that stage where we have to fight harder, and obviously we've got the legacy of women who have fought very, very hard behind us, and we have to continue to uphold that legacy. But there's something about working together. It's not divisive to have International Women's Day, or to want to celebrate that, because we are coming from a, you know, a little bit of a difficult background. But moving forward, it's about nurturing and togetherness and working as a team. And I think it's just fascinating and illuminating to hear what all of you have had to say tonight. I don't know whether we have any more questions from the team. We've just hit 7:30 p.m. and I'm very aware people may want to have dinner, and you know, Maria and Anne are an hour ahead of us. But if we have any questions,
Spain, no problem at all.
Yeah, no, that's true. Well, certainly we're not going out anywhere. Luckily, you know, I'll be spending the evening with 3 very nice glasses of wine. Thank you very much. But I'm not sure if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask, or actually Anne or Maria or Sandra, if you had anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up. No?
I wanted to invite, as soon as this craziness ends, I would love to invite all of you to visit us, to visit Portugal, and to visit our wineries and taste with us. And I hopefully visit Anne and Maria as well.
Yeah,
So, but please, as soon as we can, please join us and visit us.
Oh, now that's the next thing. It's going to be Corney and Barrow, ABTA, you know. We're going to be organising wine tours. It's going to be a mammoth tour, actually. We're going to go to Burgundy first, and then, you know, we're going to go south over the Pyrenees down to see Maria, and then we're going to end up in the Douro and then to Lisbon and fly back from there.
Oh, yeah.
How's that sound to everyone?
Sounds very good. I was going to say the same. Please come and visit. We always so happy to welcome people in the winery, because I think that a glass of wine transports you to the region where the wine comes from. But when you visit each region first person, it's something that I think it's magical. I mean, because you get what the wine is telling you, because for me, a wine tells you the story of the region and the land where it comes from. So yes, please come and visit, hopefully very soon. And well, thank you very much for giving an opportunity to our wines. And I hope you have discovered something new, interesting, and you're enjoying it.
Well, you know what, Maria, we've got one last question for you.
Oh.
Why no mention of Albarino on the Vegetaris label?
Oh, okay, very good question. And it's true, because the denomination of origin Rias Baixas, the government body, they have their rules. And in order to help the people to understand the different wine styles made in the region, it's very easy for you to understand if in the front label you can read the word Albarino, maybe the brand name, for example, Vegetaris, but in the front label, if you can read the word Albarino, it's telling you that the wine is 100% made with Albarino. If in the front label it doesn't mention only the word Albarino, but for example, like in Vegetaris, it mentions Rias Baixas, denomination of origin, it means that the wine is a blend. And as I told you, mainly these blends, they are made with a minimum percentage of 85% of Albarino, and then the remaining 15%, well, each winemaker, each winery, they decide if it is only Treixadura or Caíño or Loureira.
So I think we've answered that question pretty much. I won't ask Sandra why she doesn't have every one of her 30 grape varieties on the label.
Wow.
Anyway, look, Maria Otero, and Morey, and Sandra Tavares, thank you so much for being here tonight, and thanks to all our guests for being here with us to hear that, because without you we wouldn't have had an excuse to have Maria, Anne and Sandra with us tonight and to actually taste these exceptional wines. And it's such a treat to have such different wines and to have a kind of guided tasting, you know, and a background to this tasting in such a, you know, a short session. So although we've overrun, thank you everyone for staying on, and thanks to all of you, Maria, Anne and Sandra, for being here with us tonight.